up, guys? So I will tell you about the story of Jodel, how we got to the point where we are right now. Quite a crazy ride. And what we're looking at right now. So it all started at San Diego State University in 2012, 2013. I was studying abroad. And I had the first, idea. And in the end, what I learned is that the initial idea really doesn't matter. It just gets you going, right? So that was in San Diego. I came back to my home university in Germany, RWTH Aachen, a technical university in a German town called Aachen. It's a town with most men compared to women in Germany, with most rain. So it's a town where you start, working on ideas. And that's what I did when I came back. So I started to work on the initial idea that I had. And that's how it looked like, right? So that was basically our first draft of what is now Jodel. I actually did the design myself with Microsoft Paint, but we were very ambitious and 4 co-founders and started to, go out and pitching, went to all the accelerators that are out there. And as you can see here on the left side, that was, the first app that we launched was called Tell 'em. And then on the right side, it was friends-based. On the right side, you see what is very similar to Jodel now. Back in the days, we called it Tell 'em Public, right? That's why you see the megaphone. But it would take some time to find our way to what is now Jodel. So first, we got some, funding in Berlin by a guy called Christoph Mayer. He's, founding investor at SoundCloud, also in IM. So a few social, platforms. There's not too many in Europe. The perfect investor for us. What you see right now is the first version that we actually launched, tested. We did so in Colombia because our idea was why we raised funding in Germany and why we built the app in Germany. We wanted to go back to the States where I had the initial idea and launch it straight away in California. So after testing it in Colombia, we actually did that, went to the States and did a marketing tour in California. So we bought this van for $3,000 and pimped it a bit. And then we were just driving around from college to college, handing out merchandise and blowing our first round of funding. And while we were very, ambitious and thought this is going to work for sure, it didn't. So it was very hard at the time to accept the fact that people love the idea, but they just don't use the app. So at that time, I came back to Germany. It was in the summer of 2014, 3 years ago now. And me and my 3 co-founders were sitting down. We're like, okay, we can't really continue like that. So 2 of my co-founders, we decided that, it makes sense to split the team. Two of my co-founders went to another startup. One of my co-founders went back to the university. And I continued because I was the guy that really saw the potential users in the US as much as in Colombia. So I knew there was something, but we somehow didn't really execute it the right way. So with the last money that we still had left, I iterated the whole app from before friends-based to totally location-based, because what the people told us was that they wanted to be connected to everyone on campus, not just their friends, in a very simple way. And that's when Jodel was born. What is Jodel? I didn't explain what the idea before was. It would take too much time, but what is Jodel now? So Jodel is an app where you can easily and instantly talk to people around you, right? So that's how it looks like. You see a feed of everyone within 10 kilometers of radius. You can upvote, you can downvote them, and with that you can easily jump into the conversation around you. We started to launch that, after a few months of iterating in Aachen, where I originally studied, where it all began with the rest of the money we still had left. And the first day of the launch, it was October 20, 2014. I really remember the whole day. We had like a goal of around, I think it was around 2,000 users for a month, something like that. And the very first day, it was I was partnering up with this guy over there, actually, Niklas. So he was a friend of mine who studied also in Aachen, and he happened to just came back from his semester abroad in Brazil. So I told him, like, hey man, can you maybe hand out a few flyers for us? We're developing this app. And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. So he went in front of the cafeteria, started to hand out some flyers. And I called him at night, it was like 5 hours later. It's like, hey man, so did you, you handed out the flyers, I know, but did you also continuously post into the app so there's some activity, like I told you, right? And he was like, oh, I totally forgot about it, damn. And that was the moment where I started to understand that Jodel really works, because when looking at the feed, there was much activity. A lot of people in Aachen started to use it exactly the way how we imagined it. And that was really the first day where I started to understand, okay, finally, after 1 year of work, 1.5 years of work, we're onto something. Now it's on us to execute it the right way. And it was probably like 1 day later, maybe 2 days later, when all our servers crashed because we just couldn't handle the load. We never developed a system for that many users. Awesome. Suddenly, the use cases started to emerge the way we always wanted to have them. So what you can see here is like very early screenshots from our first community in Aachen. And what you can see is, a picture on the left side that, people start to spot other people using the app in class. And since this is a service that is location-based, right, everyone feels super connected, especially when you start understanding that the people around you are all on the same app and they're all seeing the same feed. So if the guy who took the picture right now posts something, the guy in front of him that he doesn't even know will see it in his feed, right? So suddenly, we created a totally new way of connecting locally. On the right side, you see someone posting a police control. All of this was starting to emerge to happen. And besides a lot of funny stuff that was being shared, in the end, being connected to people around you in a very simple way started to feel like something very new and something potentially very big. So we were thinking like how to scale this up, right? And again, Nicholas was in there equation, because Nicholas told me that he wants to visit some friends in Germany and travel a little bit around. I saw this back in the days as an opportunity and told him that I'm going to pay for his bus ride if he hands out some flyers in the different universities he's going to go to, right? So that was basically our first business plan. One Nicholas, 20,000 users, 50 times Nicholas, 1 million users. And that's what we did. It sounds super simple and maybe too simple, but that's in the end what we did. So across different countries, of course, right? And it wasn't only Nicholas. At some point, there were other Nicholases around, and Nicholas is now working for us as the head of community. But that's how it looks like. So what you see on the very left side was, when we launched the first university in Germany, in Aachen. And then we had, a very bumpy ride. We were 2 times almost broke, because it was very hard to convince people of what we're trying to do, trying to achieve. We even got kicked out of the App Store because people got very excited about sharing naked pictures on Jodel. And we didn't really anticipate that at the beginning, and Apple is not really a big fan of that. But you can see how it was growing, and we started to send Nicholases across different countries, our squad teams. And this led to the point that we're very strong communities right now in all the German-speaking countries, and whole DACH market, all the Nordics, and last big market that we started to activate is actually Saudi Arabia, which is the first market that we activated in a different way, not by launching universities. But nevertheless, Jodel can be used worldwide and is used worldwide. And since it's a location-based tool, if you go to Shanghai, like I did this winter, and you open up Jodel, you will be connected to people right now in Shanghai. Most likely not Chinese at this point, but other travelers, and you will get exclusive information, exclusive way to talk, about what to do in Shanghai, what's cool, what's not cool, and a lot of funny insights. While we were developing, new countries and scaling up, we tried to understand ourselves better as well, which is a very important part of the ride. And back in the days, a lot of people misunderstood, what we tried to do as the following. And we, also almost started to believe it ourselves. So what we see here is, the engagement of the daily active users. What we saw back then, 2016, last year, was that 26% of the daily actives create content. They either post or reply. 60% of the daily actives, though, vote, right? It seems like the most obvious thing to do when you open up Jodel. So we were thinking, and our investors were thinking too, it must be all about the most upvoted content. But somehow that didn't really feel right. From the very beginning, we tried to, connect people on a local level so they can really start talking. And, we were digging deeper into the data and found out that there's an event we didn't track. And that changed everything. So last year in the summer, we started to track a new event, which is basically super simple again, but in the end, changing everything. If you click on a post and if you read the conversations below, that was an event we didn't include in our analytics. And it turned out that 87% of the daily active users do that, much more than actual voting, right? And this proved to us, again, from what we felt before, it's all about the local conversation. Since then, we've been trying, to improve the way you can have conversations with people around, and not only, in Germany and with students, right? That's where we started. But we're at the point now that, we're trying to slowly evolve out of that and basically make sure that it's going to be, everyone from 18 to 26-year-old that will find relevant conversations on Jodel, and not only in Germany, but all around the world. Thank you. I think I was quicker than expected.
Oh, yes, Mike, yes, you were 10 minutes faster than expected, so you still have 15 minutes in total.
Yeah,
so yes, questions please. Here's our microphone. Elaborate on your answers.
It's quite nice to have some time for questions. So as a marketer in recruiting, what ways do I have to use Jodel to target my audience? Because I'm pretty sure you don't want us on your platform. Because marketers ruin everything.
Everything, yeah. So I actually, in one of the first pitches I did when it was pre-launch, I included a Twitter feed versus a potential Jodel feed of a certain area, right? Where you could see hashtag Berlin versus actual people in Berlin talking, and you would see it was just cluttered and fully spammed of marketers on Twitter. So yeah, right now, so on Jodel you can up and down vote, right? The community can up and down vote. And if you become a too obvious marketer, most probably the community will just kick you out, right? But I guess, one of the next 2 to 3 questions will probably be how we're gonna monetize, as it always is. And if we provide a way for you where you don't have that, where you can actually get the attention of that audience at a certain area without being outvoted, then this would be your way. But at this point, I think it will be pretty hard unless you are super creative. And then in the end, we're okay with it because then it's a benefit for the community.
Since we have time, do I get a follow-up? Is it possible to post links in Jodel? Because this is a huge differentiation between a lot of the social media platforms.
Yeah. So there's a lot of small things which I didn't talk about that we try to be very different to the existing social media. One thing is that we're location-based. That's an exclusive audience that no other social network is directly connecting you to, right? That's the first and foremost, most important thing, right? Then we focus on very easily connecting you to other people, right? So on Jodel, you don't need a profile. And then, sorry, can you repeat the core of your question?
Is it possible to post links?
Yeah, exactly. So that was the third thing. So we focus on original content, right? So on Jodel, you can only post pictures taking directly out of the app, and you can not post any hyperlinks, right? That's very important, because what we learned is, we have to protect basically the content that is, being created on Jodel, and have to make sure that it's original content. Otherwise, we're gonna get spammed with, we call it apex predator content from 9gag, from Reddit, from all the other platforms. So no, there's currently not a way to post any links and to do such things. We actively try to fight that.
Well, like you said, time to get creative.
Time to get creative, yeah.
Hi.
Hey.
So from what you just already touched it, from what I've experienced in Berlin, Angel and VC scene, people are extremely business model driven. The second question is basically they very quickly look at your product and then how you're gonna make money, is the traction and so on. So how did you pitch your product in the first place to Christoph Meyer and so on?
So of course we always have a slide that is talking about monetization as well, right? Potential monetization. And our first business plan actually showed us that in year 1 or after 1 year, we're going to be profitable and making millions, of course, as a good business plan does. But in the end, I think it's more about, is this realistic? Could you monetize? That's what you have to show, right? But then, when people are invested, you discuss together if it makes sense to monetize now or at a later stage. But you do have to have an idea, I think, because in the end, this is a business, and we're trying to create a business as well.
Thanks.
Are you afraid that other big companies like Facebook are going to do the same?
Yeah, that's also like a question we got from the very beginning always. No, not at all. I think the way we approach communication on a local level is something that is very the opposite to what the other platforms do. So on Jodel, you don't need to have a profile. You can say it's a user-to-user anonymity at this point. And that is something that is very contrary to like all the other social networks, next to the different graph that we serve, which is location, right? And I think all these platforms are too big to change to that. It's in a lot of ways it's the opposite of it. So they could maybe like do some spin-off services or something like that to compete, but in the past has shown that this doesn't really necessarily work. I think there's a lot of small details that always make the difference in social services. Yeah, I think if there's going to be a competitor, it's going to be an independent one, but it's not going to be from one of the big ones.
What's the next big thing in your product that you want to develop for the future, maybe in the next 5 years or so? So can you lay out a vision for me, for us?
The next big feature in 5 years. So we exist for 2.5 now. So it's very hard to say what feature will be in the next 5 years, the big feature. I can tell you what we're currently focused on, and that's what I show in the 2 last slides, is that we want to make sure that on Jodel, not only students and students that like what is currently on Jodel find relevance in local conversations, but that everyone from 18 to 26-year-old finds relevant conversations with people around. So we're convinced that local conversations are per default something that everyone is interested in. Also, my mother and my grandmother, if they would have the relevant people around to talk to, right? And right now, it's the biggest next task that we're looking at is basically creating a very simple yet effective matchmaking of people that want to talk about HEUREKA and people that want to see content about HEUREKA and want to engage with it, right? Which is not necessarily what the majority of the people in Berlin want to talk about. That's it. It sounds very simple. It is very simple as a problem, but it's very complex to solve it in a simple way.
So we still have 5 minutes for more questions. Anybody else?
No.
Over here. Yes, perfectly. And then there's one in the back afterwards.
So, how big is your team?
What do you think?
Since I know you are at many universities, I think about 30?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what kind of people do you want to work at your company, and how do you recruit them? How do you find them? Do you even want people working at your company?
Yes. So we want people working with us. That's very important. So what type of people? Yeah, it's a good question. So at this point, we're basically transforming from being a product much more to becoming a company. So that means that there's a lot of challenges that are new, that is different. Like I showed you back in the days, it was one Nicholas 20,000 users, and then it's like 50 Nicholas 1 million users. But at some point, growth needs to be approached in a different way. And we have like all across the company these challenges currently. So about exact positions we can talk afterwards. But what we need to have is people that are very excited about the space. We're at the point where we need people that are also experienced about the space in some sorts. right? Which is hard to find in Berlin or in Europe in general, because the whole social industry sits on the West Coast. And then in the end, it's talented people, as always, you know. And I think, last but not least, there need to be a cultural fit. So in our company, I think, you know, it's probably a little bit different to like a lot of companies in terms of what we do every day and what problems we try to solve. They're not as straightforward most of the time. There's not the ultimate end goal right now of revenue, for example, right? That is like totally obvious, makes sense. So we have to define ourselves what are the biggest challenges and the KPIs that we want to, you know, improve. And we need people that, you know, understand it and that they're driven by themselves, and we'll find that. Cool.
Okay. Can I? Okay. I would like to follow up on your personal story, because I was very impressed that you kept going after this low point, let's say 2 years ago. And probably you don't have to choose between becoming profitable and having large growth and being relevant for the people, but there's always a dimension. You probably come to a crossroad where you have to choose. So I would be interested if you could outline maybe not your company vision, but like what is your personal vision for yourself, and what you think is the one that drives you for the future.
So that's a tough question. I think it's several questions. So I think, you know, for me personally, you know, it would be the most exciting thing to build a profitable company in that space out of Berlin and or out of Europe in general. You know, I think there's been so many exciting social companies, but they're all from the West Coast, all there. You know, I mean, there are a few here, right? But not too many. And for me, most exciting thing would be to build a global social company. Not because we're social media. Out of Berlin, and employ a lot of people that are very excited about the space, and you know, being one of the pioneers here in the European Startup Hub, or also in the Berlin Startup Hub, for companies that, you know, follow up on building social companies here in Berlin and in Europe. That would be, for me personally, the most exciting thing, and I guess it's also connected to the company and to our monetization.
As you are not 100% monetizing and you're still building on being a profitable company, I guess most of the money you use, the money you burn, is capital you got from external sources, so venture capital in the end. How much pressure do you get from them to finally monetize, to finally be profitable in the end? And how do you work with them in case it is like that?
We actually don't get a lot of pressure to monetize. So the investors I think it's very important that the investors you choose are investors who understand your business. And the investors we have on board gladly do, right? So they have built social companies before, or invested in social companies before, so they know, you know, kind of like how it works. And that way they don't really pressure us. Of course, you know, it would be great if we find tomorrow a great way to monetize, and we monetize. But they also know that, you know, if we now start looking into monetization, and we start to look into monetization too much, you know, then we're not, you know, focusing on our user base and, you know, supporting and building up our user base in the end, because you can only have, you know, and that's not a money thing. Like, you can raise as much capital as you want, but it's a focus thing. So they are cool with it at this point, but you know, at some point, of course, they also want to see us monetizing. But I actually think that I, as a founder, I could imagine that I actually, you know, think about monetization before they would push for it, because you know, if we would start monetizing, we would probably grow a little bit slower, but yeah, we would monetize, which is less of a VC case usually than, or at least in the US, you know, than the other way around.
All right. If there is no last short question, we continue. So anybody, quick question? No? Then I'd say Thanks a lot, Alessio.
Thank you.